Business has become increasingly more socially oriented, and old-fashioned qualities that bespeak education and class and indicate personal style are being ranked right up with ability by many corporate leaders. These business leaders know that making a good first impression, communicating well, understanding the protocols of business are reflected in their bottom line. Every European culture has its nuances and subtleties, its own history, language, and point of view. The same is true throughout the world, and in fact, there are frequently many different cultures within the same country. Every culture has its own way of doing business. And networking has 3 simple rules. One is prepare before you go. Find out who's going to be there. Find out who you really want to meet and why you want to meet them. That's number 1. 2 is while you're there, make sure you go out and meet them. Shake their hand well, smile, have a conversation with them, and make sure that you always say goodbye if you've said hello to somebody. And the 3rd thing is follow up afterwards.
Networking is indeed important. People are your best and most valuable resource to help you reach your goals. They may become your friends, customers, employers, suppliers, or mentors. Creating a positive first impression improves your chances of success. Here are some questions to ask yourself before each networking opportunity, or for that matter, any important meeting. How is my handshake?
Your whole arm should be extended. Stand up straight. Now you see the difference? First of all, you feel like you have more power when you're standing straight, and I believe that you really want to meet me.
Slouching, poor eye contact, crossing your arms can all send negative signals. What if I have to introduce someone?
Introductions are very simple. The most important thing to remember is who is the most important person there. In business etiquette, the most important person is always either the client, if there is one in the scenario, or whoever has the highest level position in the company or in the scenario where you're introducing.
For example, if John Smith is a client, everyone would be introduced to him like this. Mr. John Smith, I'd like to introduce to you Kathy Phillips, our West Coast manager. Looking at Kathy, you might say, Mr. Smith is a new client, and it's his first time in San Diego.
Say something about each person so that the other person knows something about them to start a conversation.
Is it a formal dinner?
Very daunting when you sit down at a formal meal and you have a lot of silverware and a lot of plates and a lot of glasses to look at. And if you don't know what they all represent, you're not sure what to be using first and what they're for. A place setting like this, or any place setting, is a roadmap to your meal. Your meal should say, I'm going to have first an appetizer that represents some sort of seafood because this is a seafood fork. Then I'm going to have a soup because this is a soup spoon and it's on the outside. The rule for eating is outside in. That makes it very simple. The next thing you see are the fish course utensils. You have a fish fork and a fish knife. Then you see that you're going to have your entree fork and your entree knife. You notice that they're larger than the other forks and knives. And at the end of your meal, you're going to have the salad. Again, a salad fork and a salad knife. And what are these up here? Well, fortunately, you don't have to deal with these until dessert. This is your dessert fork and this is your dessert spoon. This is your butter plate with your butter knife. Now, most people get hung up at dinner parties because they don't know which is their bread plate. And once somebody makes a mistake, everybody at the table suffers. Because once you've taken somebody else's bread plate, then everybody else starts questioning whether or not they have the right one in front of them. Easy thing to remember. All your glassware will be on your right side. Right starts with R, river starts with R, river is water, water is liquid. This is how I always teach it. So everything liquid is going to be on your right side, which means that everything solid is going to be on your left side. A couple things to remember with the glasses is that you'll be poured according to the courses, so you know which ones to grab at which course. White wine glasses are always picked up by the stem, and that's very simple. White wine is served cold, and the warmth from your hand would warm up the wine, so you don't want to do that. But red wine is better when it's a little warmed from your hand, so do hold it by the bottom of the bowl. The last glass sits out in a place setting like this in its own little space, and that's the champagne glass.
Am I ready to mingle?
One of the most important things that you're going to do is to make small talk. When you're going into a new situation, like a reception where you don't know anybody, it's very important for you to put yourself out, to meet new people. If you start with the attitude that everybody has something to teach you, everybody has a story that's worth listening to, then you approach people with a more open personality. When you are starting the conversation, there are a couple things to remember that you can keep in the back of your mind to help you start it. One is find out the commonalities that you have. Think about what you have in common with this person. Anything in the room you have in common. You're both in that room together at that time. If you're at a meeting, then you have that meeting in common. You have the city that you're standing in. You have the day that you've just experienced in common. You might have the company you work for in common. You have a lot of commonalities. Everybody will listen more intently to you if you're complimenting them than if you were saying anything else. Everybody wants to be complimented, and everybody wants you to appreciate and respect them. So think of a compliment. Not what is that person wearing. It shouldn't be personal. It should be something about a performance that they've had, a win that they've had at their business, something good about their industry. Say their company just released its third quarter earnings and they were wonderful. That's a compliment. Even though they didn't personally involve themselves with it, it's something that shows that you care and know something about them. So that'll start a good conversation. And the third thing to do, to think about, is what are their opinions? Instead of saying, I think that this is a nice place, ask instead, what do you think about this place? There are a lot of turn-offs in conversation, and one of them is being engaged in conversation with somebody who blames and whines about things that are around them. Criticizing is something that a lot of people don't want to hear about. If you have a problem with something in the United States, something in our political system, or something in your apartment building, we don't want to hear about it unless we're really good friends of yours. We want to hear about the good things. And if you're trying to make a good impression, which of course you are, keep things on a positive. Don't whine, don't complain, and certainly don't criticize.
It is important to understand some of the insider jargon of the people you plan to meet. Appear informed, but avoid talking too much. Ask, how shall I get hold of you? Exchange information, and politely excuse yourself, allowing the person to meet others.
When you're in a reception situation and people want to be able to get in touch with you again, or you want to get in touch with the person you've just met again, how do you do that? A business card usually is the easiest way. When you give the card, when you give it with your right hand, which is the hand of respect in most cultures. And you give it facing the person, the writing facing the person who's receiving it, so that immediately they can receive it with their right hand and look at it without having to turn it over and try to see how to read it. Now, if you have a difficult name, then you need, when you give it to them, to again reiterate what your name is.